Welcome, listeners, to the Connect, Practice, Track, and Grow podcast. I'm your host, Chris McAllister, and I'm here today with my marketing partner, Laci LeBlanc. Good morning, Laci.
Good morning.
Today, I'm excited to introduce our listeners to Stephanie Dobler. Stephanie Dobler is a new agent with us here at ROOST. She actually started at the first of the year. So, Stephanie, welcome today.
Thank you.
So we want to talk to Stephanie today about how she is laying the foundation for her long-term and successful real estate career here at ROOST. And we're going to do that as we always do when we have an agent guest of honor, is we're going to sort of talk through that in terms of connecting, practicing, tracking, and growing. So Stephanie, if you would, why don't you just kind of give us some background, personal story, what got you interested in real estate, all that good stuff.
Okay. So it's kind of interesting. We actually had a flash flood at our house in 2022, and we actually lost our house completely. We lost everything we had. So we had to sell and buy unexpectedly. And because everything was damaged, we had a lot of people coming on the property without like coming with a realtor. So I ended up interacting with a lot of these people, and the real estate agent that I had told me, he said, I think that you would be really good as a real estate agent. You're good at connecting with people and the way you talk to people. He was like, you should look into it. So I was like, okay, I've been a stay-at-home mom for a little while, and that would be something good to get me back into the workforce. So I started the schooling, and here I am.
Wow. So did you rebuild on the lot that you already had?
We had thought about that, but I think it gave me too much anxiety because I just didn't want that to ever happen again. So we ended up just selling it for cents, basically. It was not good. But we ended up moving very close to our old house actually, but it's away from the creek.
Okay. Wow. I
Yeah.
didn't even know that. So
Yeah.
thank you. So tell us, how did you find your way to Roost?
So when I was taking my exam, one of my best friends was watching my daughters, and she was in the process of selling her house, and Priscilla was her agent. And she spoke so highly of Priscilla. She's actually helped them, I think, 3 times now buy and sell. And she just said she's the best in the business. You would love her. And I felt myself a little bit um, nervous coming into real estate without any background. And so I just made a call to her one day, and then I got connected with you, Chris.
So, which is wonderful, and we're thrilled that you're here, but you actually started someplace else, right? You had somebody else
I
sponsor your license.
did. Yeah, so actually that real estate agent that had sold my house, I joined the company he was with, but then that company sold out to another company. And there was just so many other people, and everybody was confused with the move, and I was one of the only new agents. So on top of being new, everybody was confused about the merge, and it just felt too overwhelming for me. I knew that I wanted more of a smaller brokerage and just people that you'd be able to talk to regularly, you know what I mean?
The
Yeah.
right fit. I'm hearing the right
Yeah,
fit is,
that's
is what we were looking
right.
for.
Yes. Yeah.
Sounds like a scorecard we once made up there, Chris.
It does. The right fit scorecard, exactly. But we all know and love Priscilla McNamee, and she's been on the podcast several times, and she helps host the All Things Real Estate podcast. So we could do a whole episode just about Priscilla, but that's phenomenal. Well, let's talk about connecting. So what was it like, sort of stepping into this business with no prior real estate experience, although you did get a crash course and having to sell and buy a house. But what were some of the things maybe that happened to you that you didn't anticipate, or just what did that feel like to you?
At first, I really felt like it was overwhelming because you just don't know where to start when like you just pass your class and then you're on your own, basically. So I was really excited to find Roost. And I'm surrounded by so many wonderful professionals that mentor and give me advice. And that's been really helpful because any question that I have, I know I can reach out to Priscilla or Tina or anybody really. and they helped me a lot. So,
Yeah. What, so where you said there's just so much, it's overwhelming. What were some of the things that were coming at you that you felt like you had to choose from, trying to figure out where to start? How did you sort through that process?
well, I think the hardest part was figuring out where to get business because I assumed that it would be much easier. Um, and so trying to figure out how to get my name out there, what I should be doing to start as a new agent, um, and just what that looked like. And then
Yeah.
I found from the beginning, one of the first clients I had, they they had me going here, there, everywhere. And we saw so many houses in such a short amount of time. I think one of the most important things I learned was my time management. Because I was, as a new agent, I'm like, yes, let's do it. And then I found myself very overwhelmed, instead of having it more organized.
I
Yeah.
feel like that's a really good point to put out there, especially for a new agent, but even for, longtime agents is we talk a lot about kind of finding your strengths and then leaning on your broker or leaning on your team or, leaning on technology or whatever to help you with kind of your weaknesses. Because as a real estate agent, obviously you're kind of a one person show. You are self-employed, even if you're with a great broker. But yeah, so being new and trying to figure out what you need to be doing all the way around, but then also trying to kind of hone in on what your strengths are and build up your weaknesses a little bit. I feel like that is probably a really challenging kind of entrance into an industry or a career that maybe
Mhm.
other folks don't face. As a marketer, I went to school, I did my thing, I learned the job, and here you are. And you do have to figure out some of that. But for a real estate agent who starts out being kind of self-employed and relying a lot on yourself, that probably was really, really challenging. Um, are there any like tools that you've found or strategies that you've found, maybe through Roost or not through Roost on your own in this first part of your career that's helped you with that?
Mm, I mean, doing the 100 Days to Greatness really helped me, because they talk a lot about how you should do time management, and they walk you through all of that, which I really appreciated. Like, there's the power hour that they suggest that you do, so that you just focus on what you need to do. Maybe mute your emails and your phone and just focus. And that really helped me because I just feel like I didn't have a set schedule, and not that you have a set schedule ever, but some kind of flow, right? So
Yeah.
that's been great for me to start my day like that. And even like working out and, just doing something for me before I start the day. That really helped.
Yeah. One of the things that has just, well, what happens with a lot of new agents, and I would say 9 out of 10 new agents, and honestly, Stephanie, you were the exception, but so many new licensees, they get their license and they truly don't know where to start. And the place that I've seen most people get stymied is they're scared to death to do anything or try anything or pick up the phone, make a connection because God forbid somebody wants to buy something and you've never filled out a contract before, right? So, you
Right.
know, a lot of agents really get stuck in analysis paralysis about doing anything because they're afraid they're going to look stupid, make a mistake, God forbid, get themselves in trouble with the state of Ohio or state of Florida or wherever. And my advice is always the same. And that's why Connect comes first and Connect, Practice, Track, and Grow. The first thing you have to learn is, and this is why, we always have everybody do Brian Buffini's 100 Days to Greatness before they do anything else, even, somewhat experienced agents. We want them to do that first because what Brian Buffini teaches is how Roost was founded, right? All the things that Brian talks about with connecting it with other people, relationship comes first. We stole that, right, to build how we do Roost. And I always tell people the first thing you have to do is figure out how to create somebody to work with, right? First thing you have to do is find somebody to work with. You find somebody to work with at our company anyway, whether it's Priscilla or Tina, Deidre, me, we're not going to let you fail that person. You know, when it comes time to, um, write that contract out, one of us is going to be right there with you. And yes, you would probably want Tina, Deidre, or Priscilla before you called me, but nevertheless, somebody's going to be there right with you to do that. And I know it's different than that at other companies, but what impressed me about you, Stephanie, from the start is I don't want to say there was no pushback because you're very analytical. You think things through, as I do. So maybe that was part of the reason that we seem to get along. But you just did it. You focused, your first 3-4 months on 100 Days to Greatness, and you focused on connecting. And until you can connect, there's just nobody to do business with, right? It doesn't matter how much you learn about filling out a contract until you have you'll forget it long before you have a reason to fill one out. So that's always been the most impressive thing to me about you. So talk a little bit, we talked long and hard about, starting to build out your database, and that's a lot of what 100 Days to Greatness is about. Can you just kind of walk us through, how you got started with your database and how you're maintaining that to this day?
So I started with like local family and friends. And then I reached out to people that I talk to like every Sunday at church. Um, or I have like cheerleading moms, like my kids are playing, doing their cheerleading. I talk to the other moms. And people that I just have genuine conversations with on a regular basis. Those were the ones that went in. And then I just stay on top of that. And so maybe if someone moves away or, you know, whatever happens, I can take them out or shift things around, and just keep adding to it. That's the goal, really.
Well, the other thing too is, you get referral maker for the first, 90, 100 days, whatever it is with Buffini, but then we as a brokerage, we make sure that every agent has their own referral maker account, and we pay for it. So have you gotten more comfortable using referral maker as a tool to track your connections and add people to the
Yeah,
database? You feel
I
pretty good about
do.
that?
Yeah, I do like how you can mark if you've sent a note or you've done a pop by or anything like that. It's really helpful to have that. And there's even room to write notes and stuff. So I like that a
Yeah.
lot.
No, it's the most user-friendly CRM for real estate professionals I've ever seen, and I've looked at every one, believe me. But I
It
think
does
you did a
remind
great
me a little
job.
bit of Michael Scott's Rolodex. I don't know if you guys watch The Office, but Michael
Love
Scott
it.
has his Rolodex and he's got it all like color coded, but like green means go ahead and don't talk about this. So it's, obviously it's funny, but that's kind of what Referral Maker reminds me of because it really does have a place to keep track of everything. The notes that you can add, you can keep track of what their kids are up to and if they've had a life change or and I think that really helps as as somebody who spends all of their time in a client relationship management software system as a marketer, to just really get to know and have these sincere relationships. I think Referral Maker is just a really good tool. We talk about shiny objects a lot and how you don't really need something fancy to do the job, but sometimes having a little bit of that helps. And this is, I think, one of those instances because you can just at a glance see and remember everything you've ever discussed with a person. And I think that does help, in a world where we're being communicated with all the time. It really does help us kind of keep track of our relationship with folks. So I think Referral Maker is a very cool tool to have as an agent and to be able to utilize.
Yeah, absolutely. Stephanie, I remember you called me up, I think it was like a Sunday, and you were rightfully excited because I think you had made a call to somebody that was in your database, and you basically qualified them the first time, and they said yes. Do
Mhm.
you remember that?
Yes,
Tell
that
us
was
about that
awesome.
story. That's my favorite story.
So that is the first client I sold a house to. She was actually my neighbor before the flood, and our daughters used to play together. So they would come to my house where we'd go to their house, and the girls would be on the trampoline or whatever, and actually even playing in that creek. And me and the mom would just talk all the time. And so when I posted that I was a new agent, she like immediately called me and she's like, "Hey, guess what I want to do? And guess what you're doing?" So she's like, can we go bowling and like talk, or what, how can I meet up with you? And I was like, well, if you want to come over to the house. And so they did, and everything just kept moving right along, and it was awesome. I was super excited that that was my first client. So
Yeah. Was she already in
mhm.
your database before you had that conversation, or did you add her
No,
after that?
actually, yeah, because she was one of those ones that I didn't really, not that I didn't remember her, but because I don't talk to her every day. That's where I had started with building my database, with people that I talk all the time to. But since I
Yeah.
moved, we didn't talk as much as we used to. So,
So so you mentioned church, and I know your kids are in 4-H. Those are two great places where, you meet people, people, they know you. Chances are they already know, like, and trust you. Is there,
mhm.
is, have you been able to add to your database based on, your relationship with those people in those groups or any other groups?
Oh yeah. So I'm actually a 4-H advisor, which is nice. So there's a bunch of us that are advisors, and we hang out regularly. We do meetings together regularly. So they were all very excited when they heard I became an agent, and they all were so supportive. Like, what can we do? And I'm like, if you can refer me, it's like that would be wonderful. And they're like, well, give us some of your business cards, and we'll help out when we can. And so then I had some pens made with my names on it, and I gave them out, and they loved those. So it's just little things like that. And they think of me now. So I appreciate that.
That's another really good
Those,
point is that I always get a lot of pushback when we talk marketing because once you start to write down the list of names of people, you know who else asks you to do that? Like MLMs. If you're selling some sort of pyramid MLM, they're like, now like list the 100 top people. And that makes you feel icky when they ask you to do it that way. But I
Mhm.
think it's important to remember that your old neighbor and these folks in your 4-H group and the people who you're writing down on this list of your top 150 are just as happy as you are that they have someone that they trust and that they know and they like already that could
Mhm.
help them with this major life change and huge transaction. So yeah, we get a lot of pushback for people who are like, I don't want to reach out to the people closest to me because like it feels like I'm trying to like sell to them or it's markety, but they are so excited to have somebody that they already know and love to help them with this just stressful life decision that they're making. So that's important to remember as you're making this list. Like they're not doing you any favors necessarily. You could end up doing them a huge favor.
Mhm.
It works both ways.
Yeah.
every one of those, parents in that group, if it was me, I would go ahead and add them to the database, because the other thing that, and maybe you're already doing this, but I would follow up with is, a personal note to each of those parents and say, it was great having assuming it was great having their kid in the group this year. It was great having the kid in the group. I appreciate your support. And there is nothing wrong with, sending that note with your business card inside, as a professional courtesy. Because, once you get them in the database and they see you on
Mhm.
Facebook, or they get Roost Ramblings in the mail, and all of these things, one thing builds on another. And a lot of people feel icky about, pointing out to their friends, especially, or they assume their family's going to refer them. So but they feel icky about, quote, being professional. And the fact is, that's another huge thing that new agents usually have to kind of get past, that mind block. But, it's a professional courtesy to, include a business card and a thank you note. And let's face it, when's the last time anybody got a handwritten thank you note? Right? So, those types
Right.
of things,
Yeah,
the
I agree.
calls, notes, pop-bys, that's critical. And even, if you're starting with 20, 30 people in your database, the goal always has to be, in my opinion, you want to add at least one qualified person to your database a week, and if you get through your first year and you've got 80 people in that database, my God, that's huge progress. And well, Dean Jackson always says, your goal is to get 100 people in that database that you would recognize and have a conversation with if you ran into them at the grocery. And I think that's the goal that everybody needs to have, especially in these times when, the market is just goofy right now. I truly believe, Stephanie, had you started, 3 years ago, or even a year or two from now, that you would have had a lot of closings by now. But it's a tough market. So what do you do in a tough market? Well, you go back to basics. It's, how do I build out that database? How do I, find a way to provide value? How do I connect without making either one of us feel icky? That's always the
Yeah.
game. So have you had any success with anything on social media? I know, I think you said that first person that you sold a house to, she saw you on Facebook. Is that what happened?
Yep, yep. I had a couple friends like from high school that I haven't talked to since high school. They saw one of my posts and reached out. Two of them did. And they're not ready yet, but they said that they would like me to help them in the future. So I added them into my database. Um, Other than that, I don't really know that I've gotten too much else off of Facebook yet or social media in general, but I mean, I think that that'll come with time.
Yeah. Well, and I think you've done a great job, starting this whole connecting process, and I'm so proud of you for that. And our goal is to support you. If the first job as an agent is to connect, then it should be the first job of a broker to promote. Right. So, we haven't done a lot of client events, although we do have pumpkin coming up again. My God, it's already been a year, the pumpkin giveaway. And, we'll want to make sure that you and every other agent invites every person in that database to come and get a free pumpkin, come October. Again, it's an odd time, a tough time for many people in real estate. So some of the things that normally would happen on Facebook, maybe we're not getting the same type of response, but every time we have a learning piece, a learn with Roost piece for buyers and sellers, um, and Laci and Kylie are making sure that those go out to your Roost Facebook page, so that you can become a resource for everybody who knows you on social media. So I think over time that's helpful. And then every couple of months, you probably want to go in and invite all of your regular Facebook friends to like your page, and that always generates, a few extra likes. So that's cool. And then the biggest thing is, that we've always had success with, and I hope you are too, is Roost Ramblings. The reason we do Roost Ramblings the way we do it is, when you add, people from 4-H or church or family or whatever, and you want to stay in touch without, being high pressure salesperson, or sending them listings that they have no intention of buying, or whatever. The beauty of
Mhm.
Roost Ramblings is it's just silly. It's fun. And we make sure that those go out to every one of your clients from you with your face on them, every 4 to 6 weeks. So hopefully that helps in promoting your connecting activities. And um, yeah, I mean, I think those are a couple of things that I like to think that, Roost is a little bit ahead of the curve there. It may be low tech, but it's high touch, as they used to say.
Yeah, no, I usually get comments like somebody will text me, "Hey, I got your mail today." They love it, so that's great.
Yeah,
Oh,
we did have the team meeting earlier this month at the Roost office where I got to meet the whole team for the first time, and that was the thing that'll be my big win for next time, Chris. Was I got to hear feedback from agents that I don't, talk to on a regular basis about how, every time we send out a postcard, they'll get a call from somebody new, or they'll get an email back, or every time we send out Reese Ramblings, they'll get a call from a couple of people, and maybe they get 5 calls. 2 of them aren't quite ready, but they want this agent to know that they're thinking about it and that they have plans moving forward. And they'll get an email, or they'll get a call from somebody new who's ready to, to sell their house or buy a new one. And I think that's the kind of, we don't see that data, right? It doesn't come through the website, so we don't track it necessarily like right then. But those are the things, those are the relationships, right? A call or an email to say, hey, I'm not ready yet, but I want to sell my house in the next year is huge for an agent. And then you have, they've confided that in you and you have their plans. And you can kind of help them prepare for that and just be there whenever they're ready, right? Whenever you're ready is our big is our big PS that we put on everything. So I think that even for me, as somebody who's been doing this a long time and sending out these postcards a long time, it's really, really positive to hear that they're having the desired effect. Even if we don't, necessarily sign up 10 people every time we send one, there are definitely 5 or 10 people who are being reminded that they have someone they know, like, and trust ready to help them whenever they're ready, which I think, I mean, you can't get better than that.
Right. I agree.
All right. So as a newer agent, connecting is the biggest part of your professional life, but let's move on to practice, mastering the craft of helping people buy and sell houses. I think we probably touched on this a little bit, but what do you think the biggest challenges, your biggest learning curves have been so far in actually serving people who want to work with you?
Um, I think I don't know. I think my biggest learning curves were it was definitely the time management. Like trying to balance multiple clients in different stages. So like meeting someone brand new. And then maybe you have somebody that's ready to buy now, somebody that's thinking about listing, or even like when I had somebody in closing stage, like just all those different stages. Um, and then like scheduling the showings was a little difficult at first because you have to know, like, if we're going to go see, say we're going to go see 4 different houses, I need to know how far apart we're going to be. Like, is it going to be 12 minutes to the next house? How long are we going to spend at each house? All those little things. It's gotten easier now, but I think at the beginning that was really hard.
No, it is. I think dot loop's hard,
Well, and then I went to I think I went to an ethics class in Columbus, and they were telling us like you have to at the minute, that's when you can open the lockbox to go in. Like you can't go early or late, you know what I mean? So that always stressed me out, like making sure my timing was right so we didn't have like the clients hanging around, So I've
Yeah,
been
no,
figuring
those
that
are
out.
great, but that is all about practice, and
Mhm.
they seem like small things, but they're not, especially when you've never done them before.
Right.
Have you been able to share any of our buy with Roost or sell with Roost presentations with any of your folks that have?
Not yet. Not yet, but I do have them all saved. And I had a possible listing, but it ended up falling through because they got too nervous. They were going to move out of state, and they're an older couple. They ended up deciding that they wanted to wait a little bit longer, but I had it all ready to go because I was supposed to meet them the next day.
Yeah.
But hopefully they'll call back in a few weeks or something.
I really like to think, and I appreciate that. I really like to think that those buyer and seller presentations, I think sometimes we start to take them for granted, but it's something that other companies may have, but they don't have the same orientation. Our buyer and seller presentations are completely focused around what's in it for that buyer or what's in it for that seller. And they set the stage for, that first meeting. The list with the sell with Bruce brochure is really all the things that a professional listing agent is going to cover when they actually get the chance to meet with the client at their kitchen table in the house. And the buyer presentation is exactly what any buyer, first time buyer, move up buyer, any buyer wants to hear from their professional when they sit down and have a buyer meeting. So I like to think that those are ways that as we go forward that will help you with your practice. Um, the other thing too is, so you joined the Columbus Board of Realtors, correct?
I did.
So what have you taken any of their continuing ed or training classes?
I have. Yeah, I've taken close to 30 hours now. So
Wow.
I really like I really like the way they teach there and just all that they offer. It's really great.
They're so professional, and there's nothing that we or any other broker could ever teach you that could possibly be better or do a better job of than the Columbus Board of Realtors does. And again, one of the things that's impressed me about you is there's two sides to this coin. There's the figuring out how to do things side. And the cool thing about the Columbus Board is they have classes on how to, do the CMA, in Flex MLS, or how to use RPR. They have classes literally on how to fill out contracts and so forth. And I just applaud the fact that you've embraced that group and that resource, because that's really the two sides of the success coin. I think it's the technical stuff, that you need to learn to order to practice, whether it's, showing time or dot loop or how to fill out a contract, all of those things. And then the other thing is just being focused on the fact that you've got to create opportunities to talk to people. And, that sometimes it's hard to balance those, but I think you've done a good job about that.
That's actually one of the classes I took was the RPR, and I really loved that. That's been such a fantastic tool.
Good, 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 good. All right, so practicing and then tracking, and I think we touched on a lot of tracking. When you don't have a lot of business, so the first question that comes up, what is there to track? But as you said, when you talked about how you use Referral Maker, and it's really cool that you're able to, track when you have a call note or pop by or follow up with somebody, that is tracking. Every time you add somebody to the database, that's tracking. Every time you realize that, it's their birthday and you go back and you put it in, to the CRM. So you get them a card out next year, all of that is tracking. And, you may not be tracking, 100 different transactions at this point, but you're planting the seeds, you're setting the stage for future success by starting now. And it's so hard. It feels so meaningless when, you're going in once a week and you're adding this flag, or you write a note or whatever. But it just goes back to anytime you can find a reason to, make a call, shoot a text, do a pop by, send a personal note, that's fabulous. That's money in the bank in the future. But to note that and track that in Referral Maker is, trust me, it's like putting money into an IRA. At some point in the future, it's going to pay off.
Well, and if you start doing it now, right, Stephanie, you're in a very unique position, as a new agent. If you start doing it now and you make it part of your routine, and you're like, you've mentioned all these logistical challenges that me, as someone who's outside of that industry, like I didn't even think about that. I had no idea you had to wait to open the lockbox. I didn't even think about driving from one showing to another, or taking people to house and how long it's going to take. Like, doesn't even cross my mind because that's not my day to day. But if you start tracking like that and you start using your database like that now, then it's going to be second nature when you do have a million transactions and you do have a lot of business. It's not going to feel like something you have to add to your plate. It's going to be a natural thing that you just do. And I think that that's a huge advantage for you, especially, having worked with realtors in all ages and stages. So I think that that's a really good point to make, is that this is the tracking, Chris. This is not like fluffy work. This is not stuff that, like, this is tracking. It's just going to look a little different as you grow.
Yeah. Well, and anytime you hear somebody say, not this year, but maybe next year, that comment goes into Referral Maker. It's every little thing you hear. It's every little thing somebody says. It's just trying to get in the habit of, hearing those side conversations, documenting it, and being able to follow up. It's what separates as we say, the new professionals from everybody else.
Yeah, because let somebody hear me like mention at a barbecue that we're thinking about selling our house next year, and then come back to me in about 9 months and be like, hey, I just remembered that you were, talking about selling your house, and here's a piece of information, and maybe it's an article, or maybe it's news, or maybe it's just, home prices in that neighborhood are going up, or whatever the case may be. I just thought you might be interested in this. And like, what a way, like, who else would I call at that point? Like, even my Nana is a real estate agent, Stephanie. We talk about Nana a lot. So you'll hear about her, but like, I would call you over Nana, because Nana has a hard time, remembering all the things she has to do in a normal day, much less everybody else's plans, because she's not in that mindset of a new real estate professional. She's definitely one of the tried and true that does everything kind of the old way. So yeah, I would call you over Nana if you came back to me 9 months later and were like, hey, I remembered you mentioned that you might sell your house, ...
Well, I always say that if you have an agent who's actually focused on connecting with potential clients, current, past current but future clients, if you have an agent who's doing that, that they're always looking to enhance, their practice, get better at how they serve, um, buyers and sellers, whether it's through extra education or learning new things or, using different marketing pieces that your broker provides. If you're doing that and you're tracking your work, then you can't help but grow. And as we kind of close out this episode, and as we talk about Connect Practice tracking and growing, let's talk about growth a little bit. And I guess one question, and maybe you already talked about this a little bit, but is there is there anything about what you've been through the last few months that's just absolutely different than what you thought it was going to be like?
Well, yeah, I think that I assumed I would be selling more houses by now,
Yeah,
but
well,
I maybe everybody is, but yeah, I think that's what I thought. But I am proud that I haven't given up on it. Like even just like we were just saying about the CRM, like they're little seeds right now, like they almost feel silly, but I know if I keep the habit up long term, it'll be better. So I don't know. That's how I feel right now with being kind of slow. I think it'll evolve.
yeah. Well, that's where I always say what my seventh grade algebra teacher always told me, have faith and follow the rules. So have faith
Yeah,
and
and I
keep
don't think
track.
that that's a unique experience. I think that, we see Chris and I talk a lot when we're talking about marketing to agents specifically about agents with batteries included, or, how we're gonna, half of marketing is targeting which agents we'd like to reach out to, and how do you identify those? And I think that the folks that persist through that kind of initial process are like that's half the battle, because everybody feels that way. I think from what I've heard, that's not a unique experience. So it's, regardless of the market, you're starting a brand new business, and that's a difficult thing to do. So having the tools you need to help you kind of work your way through it is really important. But I think, yeah, following the rules and keeping at it and having the right mindset is also a huge portion of it, because a lot of folks will get their real estate license with big plans and big dreams, and then end up kind of abandoning that because it's hard. And real estate is not easy. It's not an easy
Mhm.
industry to be in, no matter what the market looks like. So I think that's a really good point that you make there.
What do you think your biggest wins are for your first year in real estate?
Selling my first house, definitely.
Yay!
But I think also too, like I just said, not giving up and not like I think that a lot of new agents that are not being successful and not making the money kind of get desperate and kind of treat their clients poorly. Like I even picked up another client because I was kind and like I understand like this is a big purchase for you. Like we don't need to rush into it. His last agent was snappy and mad that he wasn't ready to buy. And I just think that's so off-putting. So even though this year has been hard, I haven't lost who I am and why I got into this business. Um, Obviously to make money, but like I truly care about my clients and what they're trying to get out of, the process. So I don't know. I think that's one of my wins too.
No, I think that's why you're a professional now, and you will continue to grow into be one of the top pros around in real estate. I absolutely believe that.
Thank
All
you.
right. Anything else before we wrap up today?
I don't think
No,
so.
I'm just excited to have Stephanie on board. I think she personifies Roost. She personifies the connect, practice, track, and grow culture. It's just really exciting to have, to be able to go to work for you, Stephanie, to have you choose us to work with. I think that says a lot about you, and it says a lot about Roost, and it makes me really proud.
Oh,
Oh,
thank
and
you,
thank you,
Laci.
Priscilla.
Yes, thank you, Priscilla.
All right. Well, thank you for listening to today's episode of Connect, Practice, Track, and Grow. Again, I'm so proud of Stephanie, her open mind, her desire to learn, her willingness to listen and adopt, the training. And I think we can already see that the core concepts of Connect, Practice, Track, and Grow, they've already shaped her first year, and I'm confident that they'll have a really great foundation for her success in the future. But yeah, persistence, professionalism, first class We're so happy to have you with us. And if people want to connect with you, they can do that on the Roost website. If there's an agent page there where they can find all of your contact information and a little bit of background on you, and they can reach you at Stephanie at roostrealestateco.com, and we'll put your phone number and your email address in the show notes. So anybody that listens to this that wants to connect with you, they certainly can.
Thank you.
All right. And that's it for today. So when you focus every day on connecting, practicing, tracking, and your actions and doing those three things, connecting, practice, and tracking, you can't help but grow. So keep at it, be persistent, and we'll talk to you next time.